Good afternoon and welcome to Miss Don's Justice. So glad to have you here today. We're celebrating Black history, and today our emphasis is on education. And as many of you know, education played such a pivotal role in our struggle. The most revered profession in our community for many years, and even now, was the role of a teacher. A teacher. And the educator played such an important role uh, that was in our community, not just in our schools, but also in cultural activities. Today, I have with me a childhood friend and classmate from the old Barnett Elementary School in Huntington, West Virginia. And I'd like to introduce you to Yvonne Boggs Walker. Now, I'm going to always think of her as Yvonne Boggs, like I do most of my childhood friends. I refer to them by their maiden names because that way I know I'll always be right. Okay, now we have a special bond because her mother was our first grade teacher, none other than Mrs. Helen Boggs. And I'm gonna make reference to her in just a few minutes. But before we get started, I always come with some political information from the District of Columbia. On yesterday, the encampment down at McPherson Square was cleared out. And that included some 70 homeless people. It happened about 2 months ahead of the regular scheduled event. The mayor wanted it expedited. So many people were evicted from that camp and their things were put into a dumpster. They're supposedly moving into some housing with wraparound services. We'll follow up and tell you if that happens later on. This coming Sunday, we're going to celebrate the life of someone who died as a homeless person. We all knew Angie Hill. She died a couple of, a very short time ago. But this Sunday, we're going to celebrate her life. She has struggled with mental illness issues and she lived under the Sousa Bridge. This coming Sunday's event is called Under the Sousa Bridge, right where she lived. Many of you will recognize her when you see her posters all around. Check out my Facebook page, it's on there. And we certainly miss her. Her life and legacy will be celebrated this Sunday. And, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had a lot of cold days. But when you see something out there that doesn't look right, you see somebody who's in the cold, please notify your human services, social services departments so that they can take action. Yesterday's event of clearing the encampment made me think a lot about that. So let's not forget the people struggling out in the cold. Okay. Well, today we're going to go down memory lane. We are both from Huntington, West Virginia. That's Cabell County. Uh, and it is so important in terms of Black history. Am I right?
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
We went to school, and when we were in school, we didn't even think about it, but we went to Barnett Elementary School, and that was housed in the building that was the old Douglas High
Right.
School. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, what makes that so remarkable is that is the building where Carter G. Woodson went
Right.
to school. And
Yeah.
we know him as the father of Black
Black
history.
history.
Yeah. And isn't it funny that when people hear we're from West Virginia, they have some strange ideas like, um, I guess we're hillbillies
Yeah,
and
you're from the
from the
country.
country and all of that. And
Yeah.
when we were in first grade, the city had about 100,000 people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did.
Uh, it's not a coal mine town. We didn't have coal mines. So we were blessed to be surrounded by a very loving community.
Right.
How do you remember that community?
I remember Huntington in the Black community. It was a very close knit family slash community.
Mhm,
And all the neighbors there were like, our family.
mhm,
Like if they saw us do something wrong,
mhm.
one of the neighbors, somebody across the street, somebody next door to you, they would reprimand us. We'd be in trouble. And then they will go tell our parents, well, your son, your daughter did this. What? Yep. And then we will get in trouble by our parents. And you know what that was? A spanking. Yes, it was. And that's how I remember, living in the Black community because it was so close. The neighbors, they would come over, and if the door was unlocked, sometimes my mom didn't even lock the door at night.
That's right.
She would not lock the door. Sometimes she would. And if the door was open, one of the neighbors would come over. Miss Ball, can I have a cup of sugar? Can I have a couple slices of bread or milk or eggs? And my mom said, go in and get there, honey. Go ahead, get all you want. And that's how the neighborhood and the community was back in the day when, we grew up
Mhm. So when you hear that expression, it takes a village to
to
raise
raise
a
a child.
child. We lived that, didn't we?
We lived
We
that.
lived that.
We
Oh,
lived that.
and I feel very blessed and grateful about that. And when we went to school uh, at Barnett, I felt safe in that building. I felt all the teachers had a genuine interest in my outcomes. They didn't just teach me during those set hours.
Right,
Do you
right,
remember that?
right.
Well,
Yeah,
you lived that.
yeah. Because I remember the teachers, they loved the children, and we did learn at Barnett Elementary School.
Yes, ma'am.
We passed all the standardized tests. The
Yes.
teachers would tutor us at lunchtime instead of eating lunch themselves. They would have children in their classroom tutoring them.
Mhm.
And also, the teachers would go to your house and pay you a home visit.
Ooh.
And also, it may be good, it may be something unpleasant, but they talk to your parents about what needed to be done, and they will help you.
Yeah. And when you say that, I'm thinking of that time and this time. If a teacher approaches a parent or says something, some of my friends are now retired, of course, and they told me they had a really hard time dealing with parents because the parents would be in attack mode sometimes, and you really are
Mhm.
just trying to help. So those of us coming from the era you're talking about, that
Right.
we're talking about, that must have been a hard adjustment uh, to come into a situation where parents are immediately hostile. You know.
That's right. Because when we were growing up, the parents, was very respectful to the teachers,
Yes,
to the
yes.
community.
Mhm.
As now is very much different because this generation, that some of the parents, are not respectful, you know, and the children as well.
Mhm.
The way we grew up, it was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, sir. It was just respect.
Mhm. Yeah, and I sort of experienced that because I did some substitute teaching
Right.
in Prince George's County. I'll be very specific, and it was a little alarming because I could see the difference in attitudes. And of course, PG County is considered one of the most affluent Black enclaves in America. And I was just stunned at the difference in how education outcomes were,
Hmm.
the expectations for them, uh, were well presented. And I I did encounter some hostile parents. I did. But then I did encounter some who, once we sat down and talked, understood what we were trying to do. And I gave them a historical background of
Right.
what we're talking
Right.
about right now. And I found some of them were just so stressed, just trying to make ends meet. Uh, both parents working. I had parents who worked two jobs. The mother worked two jobs, the father worked two jobs. It was very stressful. So, when we did live in a different time, some of our mothers were housewives, for a while. And some did work outside the home. But there was an emphasis in that time about being respectful in the school environment because you didn't want to embarrass your family.
Right.
Remember
Right.
that,
Yeah, I
don't
remember
it? And
that.
so that is why when you did get in trouble at school, uh,
You
you
got in trouble at
at
home.
home, yeah, you had, they called it reinforcement.
Right. Mm.
And when I was in college, Yvonne, I shared, one of my roommates was an education major, and there was something called, and I'm sure you remember this concept, behavior modification. Do you remember?
Yep, I
Do you
sure do.
remember that? So she told me, she said, Donata, I want you to practice with me this little exercise for behavior modification. So uh, she had me, I was the student, she had
Mm.
me, she was the teacher. And she said, I know you're angry and you, you're going to, it looks like you want to hit me. And she said, and if that makes you feel better. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking,
Right.
okay, am I in a parallel universe here or what? Because
Right.
I hit her. She said, now do you feel better? So I told her, I said, time out. You know, I, you are from Baltimore. Are you going to do this in Baltimore City? She said, look, I'm just trying to pass this course. You know? But do you remember going
Right.
through that
Yep.
concept of behavior modification?
Yep.
I said, okay, all right. I was just thinking that she can't really be serious about doing that in the inner city, And, it was just funny. But back to our days at Barnett, when we realized that it was the building where Carter G. Woodson
Right.
matriculated through high school, the reason he came there to high school was because he was from Virginia
Right.
and there was no high school for him in the Commonwealth of Virginia where they lived.
Hmm.
So they moved to West Virginia and he worked in the coal mines for a while. And then he and his brother attended Douglas High School. Not only did he attend Douglas High School, at a later time, he became the principal for a brief
Right.
period. Then he went on to Berea College, got one of his degrees,
Hmm.
and then he was the second Black person to get his doctoral degree at Harvard, the first being W.B. Du Bois.
Right.
He was right behind him. So,
Yeah.
we come from a very strong heritage.
Right.
Yeah, and that probably gets by most people. The uh, line there, we had three historically Black colleges there: West Virginia State, Bluefield State, and the Old Store College, which was up in Harpers Ferry.
Hmm.
And where did your mom go to school?
She went to I think West Virginia State,
Mm-hmm.
and also she went to Hampton,
Hampton.
Hampton University. And I think she took some courses during the summer in Denton, Arizona.
Uh-huh. Well, you bring up a great side story there because in West Virginia, like a lot of states, teachers had to take, I guess you call it recertification now, but
Right.
then they called it refresher courses.
Yeah.
And the sad part about that is there was a teachers college right there in our hometown. Marshall College was historically a teachers college, and later it became Marshall University. And our teachers couldn't go there.
No, they could not. Because my mom would tell me, it's a college right here,
Mhm.
but, blacks could not attend. So she would have to go to, a black college, which was, West Virginia State. She took some course, Hampton University.
And that was a long way away.
Yes.
Hmm.
And then we were talking about the refresher courses. So she had to go all the way to Maryland, Denton. You heard of Denton, Maryland?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's where she went,
Mhm.
and she stayed with a family there.
Mhm.
And every summer she had to take refresher courses there. And she would tell me that this family, had goats and horses, and she would tell me, and pigs,
Mhm.
and they would line them up to slaughter them.
Mhm.
And she said, like in the middle of the night, she would hear them, wailing and crying because they were next in line to be slaughtered. And this was in Denton, Maryland. She would, tell me all these stories about that. So she always had to take refresher courses.
Yes, to keep her teaching
Yeah.
license. So you see, even though they couldn't go to this school right there where they taught, there was no waiver
No.
saying that because you couldn't go to this white school, there was no,
Yeah.
they still had to meet the standards, irrespective of their
Yeah.
personal situation.
Mhm.
And you bring up something that many people, especially here in the Washington area, don't understand those kinds of
Mm.
struggles. There were whole industries rising up around that issue. There were people who kept teachers in the summer. They made a living that way. And it was usually in the summer where the teachers coming from, it wasn't just where we lived, but this was around in the South. And they kept teachers, and I guess it was like a bed and breakfast for teachers who were who came to get coursework to keep up their credentials.
So they stayed with other
They
people.
stayed with other people.
Okay.
So, uh,
I was here in DC.
well, that was a number of places. There were communities in New York that kept teachers,
Okay.
and all of that,
Mm.
because so many black teachers had to scramble and find a place to take those. I'm calling it refresher courses. I'm dating myself, but recertification
Right.
courses. Yeah, yeah. See, coming up out of the South. And it's so interesting. They didn't structure those courses so that you could take them nearby necessarily. I mean, you just
Mm.
had to take those courses somewhere.
Right.
Mhm. So you probably noticed we have a number of teachers from way back in the day who have degrees from maybe Cornell, Columbia, places like that. I mean, people are stunned when they see the obituaries,
Right.
you see. So the whole industries grew up around that issue where teachers could not take those refresher courses right there at Marshall College or, uh, but at that time, many of our teachers, I think, went to West Virginia State or Bluefield
Yeah.
State,
Mhm.
and some other places. Uh, it's amazing, and when I think of how you made a reference and you went quickly over it, but I'm going to come back to it. We passed the standardized tests.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And we learned.
And we learned.
Learned.
Yes, we learned. And we had a great principal,
L.D. Johnson.
L.D. Johnson,
Yep.
Leroy Daniel Johnson. Okay, folks, if you're from H Town watching, okay, you remember he was really tall. What do you say, about six
He
five?
was tall
Yeah, he
now.
was about 6'5", and he
And
walked so softly through, you could not hear him coming.
he walked softly and carried a big stick.
There you go.
A big stick now.
And he was the one thing you never wanted to hear Mr. Johnson say was, "Come here, my friend. We need to talk, my friend," because his talking, you didn't want to be part of.
No,
trust and believe you didn't
did.
want to.
You sure
And
did.
our school was quieter than some libraries.
That's
Remember that
true.
echo
Yep. You
effect
could
in the
hear the
hallway?
echo. It was so quiet. And I remember when we were in first grade,
Mhm.
every morning, because my mom was our teacher,
Yes.
every morning she started her classroom with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance
Mhm.
every morning.
And sometimes we sang. She taught
Yeah,
us
yeah,
music.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
She played because there's a piano in the
There was a
classroom,
piano in the
and
classroom.
we
Yeah.
would sing the good morning, the prayer song.
Hmm.
But I remember that, and also changing the subject. The teachers were so concerned about every student. They gave every student an equal opportunity to learn the best way that they could. They taught the child to learn. And even so, some children, didn't have, soap and the toothbrush and a washcloth to wash up to come to school.
Hmm.
And a lot of teachers, I know my mom had a cloakroom.
Hmm.
Now, some of you may not know what a cloakroom is. That's a place where you hang your coat and book
Hmm.
bags and
It's
umbrellas and
mobile.
everything. Yeah.
Hmm.
And she always kept a toothbrush back there, toothpaste, washcloth, deodorant, and a brush and comb.
Hmm.
And the children, that needed to be washed up, they would go back there and they
Hmm.
wash. That's washed up, and that's called caring.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
different from today.
Oh yeah.
That's
And it
the
was
difference.
and it was done in a way that didn't dehumanize
No,
people. Their
no, they did
dignity
not.
was maintained. Maybe they came early,
Yeah,
or something like that, and I remember that.
yeah.
I remember that. I
You remember
remember.
the time when at lunch
Oh,
we would sing?
yeah. Now this is a little funny story there. When we would line up to get our trays, suddenly you would see the light blink on and off, and that meant you stopped wherever you were. You didn't talk, and we sang the grace.
Yeah,
It was sung.
it was
Okay.
sung.
Yeah, thou art great and thou art good, and we thank him for our
For
food.
food.
By
And
his hand we're
now
all
we
fed. Give us, Lord, our
daily
daily
bread.
bread.
And we would sing that
And yeah,
before we could touch our food.
food. Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell on myself. When I went to Ole Junior High School and I went in the cafeteria, you know what I was waiting for?
It's the prayer,
The
the
grace.
grace. Yeah,
And of course,
yeah,
and that was an integrated school, so
yeah,
they didn't do grace there. Okay,
yeah.
they didn't do grace like we did. So I'm telling on myself, and that I guess that's what you would call a
Yeah.
culture gap, a culture gap. So uh, that was funny, and I was telling one of my cousins, not too far from here, about it. She said, "Yeah, we had a different experience altogether when we went to
Went to, oh,
junior high
yeah,
school." Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was,
yeah.
I don't remember missing school for snow. We did miss if the boiler was broken. And here's another thing, you're talking about paddling. Okay, Miss May V. Brown, you remember Miss Brown?
Yes.
Yes. Down the hall, the other first grade class had two paddles. Did you know she named her paddles?
Popeye. Was it
Popeye
Popeye?
and Olive Oil.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
Popeye for the boys, olive oil for the girls. And I mean, she was, a serious, stern person. And who did we have for second grade?
Miss Warren.
Regelia Warren.
Yeah.
Regelia Warren. Lovely person. Lovely person. I don't think she's related to Carter Woods. Hmm.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, I
Oh,
think so.
okay.
Yeah. And Dr. Woodson had a niece, and show you the connection with here in Washington. See, because we have a lot of connection with Washington, D.C. Um, a number of people from Washington went to school at West Virginia State.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a strong West Virginia
Right.
State College alumni here. Well, uh, when you think about Huntington and that West Virginia State connection, you can think of a number of people
Right.
who, who
Yeah.
went there. Yeah, who went there. And Dr. Woodson had a niece there who went to a boarding school in Washington, D.C., Nanny Helen Burris School.
Oh, was that
Yeah,
right?
Nanny Helen
Oh,
Burris, and it's like a
so,
boarding school
uh-huh.
at that time. Yeah. And when I was down there once, she came by to visit me. She said, I know you're here from Washington. She said, I went to school up there at Nanny Helen Burris School, and I'm Carter G. Woodson's niece.
Oh, wow.
And it was a
That's a,
great conversation.
right.
Yes, 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 yes. And so Douglas had a number of luminaries there. One of them was Miss Lavinia Norman.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, Miss
Hmm.
Lavinia Norman was my mother's English, French, and Latin teacher in at Douglas High School. But she was also one of the founders of AKA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
she's
remember
one of the
that.
nine. She was one of the nine who founded AK. And she's a native West Virginian whose father got a job at the post office in here in DC. That's that connection again, that DC
Okay,
West Virginia
right.
connection. And so there were about nine or so. She was from a big family, and they came here, and that was considered a really good job at the post office. She went to school here at Howard. She helped found AKA, but then she went back to Huntington to teach at Douglas, and she
Okay.
taught there over
Mhm.
40 years. Uh, she retired in 1950. That's about the time we were
Right,
born.
right. Yeah, 1950.
And she came back here, and she lived to be 100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
100
yeah. They
years old.
honored her at Rankin Chapel at Howard University. Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
The other West Virginia Washington connection was, Howard University, like a number of historically Black colleges, they were founded by whites and named after whites. And many times the first presidents were white. Well, the first Black president of Howard University was Mordecai Johnson, and he pastored the First Baptist Church of Charleston, West Virginia.
Is that right?
See that
Right,
connection? Yeah,
right,
yeah. And so I'm always amused when people come with that image of West
right,
Virginia as being
right.
unsophisticated and so forth. And when you get that glazed over look from people when you correct them, or
Right.
so you do it nicely, and they're like stunned to
Yeah.
understand that.
Because when I moved here 2 years ago
Hmm.
and joined my sorority,
Oh,
Fort Washington Alumni
okay.
Chapter
Delta
here,
Sigma Theta.
Delta Sigma Theta, and I was amazed at how many sorors were from West Virginia.
They were glad to see you, weren't they?
Yes, they were, and most of them went to West Virginia State.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There were a couple that went to Marshall,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of them went to Bluefield State
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and West Virginia State.
And when you
And
said
Morgan, was it Morgantown too?
up at WVU,
Yeah,
yeah,
WVU.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was just amazed. I said,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I'm not the only one from West Virginia."
Yeah, okay, I'm glad you made that connection, because so many African Americans here in Washington, Yvonne, have a Carolina root.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you'll notice that, as you go along, especially North Carolina and a few South Carolina, but mostly North Carolina. They had that root. I think the migration came straight up from Carolina to DC and on up to Philly and New York, like that. Much
Mm,
like the Detroit people are from the
connection.
Delta,
Yeah.
Mississippi and
Hmm.
Louisiana and like that. And so, yeah, oh, I'm really glad you connected in that way. Uh, but yeah, Miss Norman did help found AKAs. And that's funny because your mom was
She was.
AKA.
My mom was AKA, and her daughter, me, what is a Delta.
Okay.
But
Now,
she supported me,
oh, sure.
whatever I wanted to do. She supported me and my sisterhood.
All right.
Yeah,
There you go. And that
with
and there is
grace.
that sisterhood. And the Black Greek life is so tied
Yeah, it is.
to
It's true.
your
Mm-hmm.
profession. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And they wanted us to succeed.
yeah.
And I am grateful that I went there to school because I got such a strong sense of self.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
they put that in us so that when we did have to go to an integrated school, and for most of us, that was seventh grade. I know you went earlier because
Third grade.
your mom was
Yeah.
put into an integrated school. Uh, and the thing about that is, uh, we were we went into that situation and we felt confident.
Right.
Yeah, they had put that confidence in us, so it wasn't scary at all in terms of academics.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the way that happened, they moved the black teachers. Some black teachers were moved into a white school
Right,
at that time. So that's why my mom left Barnett and she was moved to a white school.
right. And she was considered. I know you're trying to be, you don't want to sound like you're bragging, but Mrs. Helen Hallie Boggs was considered a premier first grade teacher, black or white. And what they did, this came, folks, as response to the 1954 decision, with the
Yeah,
desegregation. Yeah.
right.
And what happened, and this was a pattern across the country. This wasn't, we're talking about West Virginia, but this was a pattern across the country. And for people who grew up in DC, this is going to sound a little strange to you unless your grandma or somebody told you about it. Okay. Um, they, in the South, took the best black teachers and put them into white schools when they were absolutely forced
Right.
to do it. Okay, when it had to happen, that was the first step. That was the first step, you know. And so
Uh,
your
right.
mom was put at Ole. I'm not
She
surprised.
she put she was moved to Ole,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
she took me with her,
Right.
even though she was first grade. So I enrolled in Ole, but I was in third grade.
All right. Well, I did manage to get all the way through sixth grade at Barnett, and then went to Ole Junior High School because there was nothing, Douglas had been phased out. Douglas High School closed. The last class was 1961.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
1961. And just so many fond memories. I did know some of the teachers there, and I know you knew probably all of them. The other thing that happened in that was most of them went to church.
They did.
How about that? Tell me about
The teachers,
it.
the teachers in the community at our schools were church members of the church that we went to. A lot of the teachers went to Young's Chapel AME Church, and what was the
Sure.
other? That was my church,
Ebenezer.
and Ebenezer.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's where
and
most of our black teachers
yeah.
uh, went to
So, so we
went
saw
to
them all the
church.
time.
So we saw them in the church, out of church, in cultural events, Girl Scouts, 4-H, choirs. Remember Vacation Bible
Oh
School?
Lord. And okay, the churches, the black churches, uh, had a rotation on the vacation Bible schools, so that they didn't have them at the same time. We could go to all of them and have summer activities pretty much
Yeah.
all the whole time. Yeah,
So
yeah,
we was in Vacation Bible School all
all summer.
summer.
It
At,
seems so.
at all the churches, we was
Hmm.
in Vacation Bible School.
Hmm. 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 So that education was not just a secular education. Many of them were Sunday school teachers. I
Oh
know your
yeah,
mother was in, oh Lord,
yeah,
everything.
everything. I was in 4-H. My mom was a 4-H leader. I was in Girl Scout. She was a
She
Girl
was the Girl
Scout
Scout
leader.
leader.
I was a Brownie. She was a Brownie leader.
Yeah, I was
Right.
right
I
there
mean,
with you.
yeah.
I was
Mm.
right there with you. And so that was not unusual to have that involvement like that. And when I look around now, let's just compare. It's just not like that.
No,
No,
because teachers, when we were growing up back in the 50s, teachers were, it was not a job for them.
no,
Teachers, it was a calling for them,
exactly.
not a
It's like
job.
it was
It
like
was a
being a minister.
calling.
It was like being a minister. You're
Mhm.
called. Well, you're supposed to be
Yeah.
anyway. Some people do call themselves, but that's another topic. Okay, so anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, that so that extra mile they would go. That whatever, and see, I tried hard not to get in trouble, Yvonne. I tried really hard not to get in trouble because many times, well, they either got a spanking in the cloakroom or some teachers took you to the nurse's office. Well, the school nurse was my Aunt Maddie. I did not want to go
That
in
was,
there.
all
Miss
right,
Maddie
Miss
Boggs.
Balls.
Maddie,
Yeah.
Miss Maddie Boggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not want to go there. I did not. And then Aunt Maddie had a sister, Miss Naomi Nicholas, who had a kindergarten.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
there.
You were there
I
too.
was there. Yeah.
Now, when I think about her, she was a very strong personality. Um, she spoke up. She was outspoken. And of course, that didn't go well with, even though we had the black schools, Douglas, she was teaching at Douglas and Barnett. The hierarchy for the county was white.
Right. Mhm.
And so the superintendent of schools, I'm going to give it to you in shorthand, told my Aunt Naomi, Miss Nicholas, if you don't like the Campbell County public schools, start your own school. Well, she did.
Did.
And she had a waiting list for her
Yeah.
kindergarten. It was so good. Okay. And she studied the official kindergarten curriculum. Yeah. The German
German.
kindergarten. Yeah. The
Mhm.
German kindergarten. And I mean, she was so successful. And watch how people are so mean sometimes. She became so successful at it. Then some in the white community, not all, did mean things to try to shut her down
Yeah.
and
They
used
did.
some of our own people to try to do it. I don't want to make like everything is sunshine and light here, but that's the way it was.
It was.
That's the way it
That it
was.
was.
And she
Yep.
was just extremely successful. She converted her garage into a kindergarten. And out of that kindergarten, I can look back at some of the old pictures. I see bank presidents, nurses, teachers, all
Yeah.
kinds of people,
Doctors,
doctors.
attorney. Yep.
I see people, I did go there. Yes, I am, and
And you did go there and you are an attorney.
yes, I am. Yes, I am. My cousin Marie went there and she became the first Black female
Yeah.
state senator, I think.
Yeah.
You see,
And your
so
sister, did you, and your sister's a doctor,
yeah, she didn't go there, but
but
here's
she's
what's funny. Here's what's funny about that. Aunt Naomi died in December and Kim was born in January. So I think there was
okay.
some kind of,
Right.
something
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's a lot younger, but uh, that she put a lot into my mom musically.
Mm.
And Aunt Naomi was just a go getter. She was a Fisk Jubilee singer.
Okay.
She was a Fisk Jubilee singer. Now that's a history too. Fisk Jubilee singers. Now she
Mm.
wasn't in that group, but back in the
Right.
late
Yeah.
1800s, they saved the school.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they did the touring all
Mm.
over Europe. The first, and there were 9 of them in the
Was
Jubilee singers.
Lavella Hughes in that group?
Well,
Oh,
no,
that
I
was,
don't think
but
that was, yeah,
that was
that,
that
yeah,
was that.
no,
Okay.
but in Fisk, She was these were people who came out of enslavement.
Okay.
Okay. And there were 9 original singers. None of them received their degrees, but they kept the school open so that other people
Okay.
could.
Good. Hmm.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And I'm just in awe of how we work together
Right.
to make those things happen, you know. And then a later group also toured. They went to Australia and everywhere. And and I did not know this, but Queen Victoria coined the phrase, they're from the city of music. And you know, Nashville is known as Music City.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't know
We,
that.
we, we put our stamp
Yeah.
everywhere, you know, and that's why
Yeah.
I refuse to be diminished to make other people feel big.
I know. Yep. I know
Okay.
what you
They
mean.
taught us that too.
Yep.
They taught us that too. I don't allow it. I don't allow it. No. So, you know, sometimes you figure, why am I this way? And it's because we have experienced that. And I had to tell someone from Chicago, they were talking about Marva Collins starting her own
Right.
school. You know, I said, well, I kind of lived this. And before
Right.
Marva Collins, there was
Right.
Naomi Nicholas.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah. And see, when we don't know our history, people can bamboozle us. They, when we don't take the time to teach our history to our young people,
Well, you know,
we
they
can,
took
yeah.
that out of some of the schools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when we was going to school, it's called Negro History
Negro
Week.
History Week.
Negro History
And
when we were going to
yeah,
school.
yeah. And we had it really all year round, but that particular week it was
Yeah.
emphasized. It was emphasized. And later I realized just how close we were to the creation of that, you know,
Right.
with Mr. Woodson. That
Yeah.
was Dr. Woodson, Dr.
Yeah.
Carter G. Woodson. Yeah. So I mean he is the father of Black history. He created that Negro History Week. And his book, and I tell all young people this, young people, read Miseducation of the Negro. It still has some very, very strong
Right.
information in it, you know, and it talks about how we should not limit ourselves, you know, because sometimes we can act like Pavlov's dogs, get conditioned into certain
Right.
things, you know, and then we do to ourselves what other people have tried to do to us. That's a powerful message. That's a powerful
It sure
message.
is.
Now, we had some cultural activities as well,
Yes,
and
we did. You know, we had the CDICs.
oh yeah,
You
that was
remember
Miss
with
Brown.
Miss Brown CDICs and there were Melody Kids.
That's you, Miss Boggs.
Yeah, my mom.
Uh-huh. And the Chapelettes.
Yeah, and I was the I used to play for the Jefferson Chapel AME Church Sunday School.
Okay.
I was a choir director and the pianist and for the chapelettes.
Okay.
But my mom started that first,
Yeah,
and
I
then
know
I
that.
preceded that.
I know that.
So our community and the neighborhood, we were, you know, in the church
Yeah,
as long, you know, as well as in the schools.
that's right.
So we saw everybody in church and in
Well,
school.
see, there was
That
a
was our life.
yeah, there was a continuum. The learning went on. You know
Yep,
how we put together the drama guilds in the churches,
yep,
an extension. And see, since the teachers knew you, they knew your abilities.
yep,
Okay, and I was a Sunday school pianist at
yeah.
First Baptist. So yeah.
Attorney Edwards, she's a pianist, an organist, and she plays everything. You name it, she does it.
I don't know about all that, but I'm grateful. I am very grateful for those skills. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do those things. And see, said this at my mom's funeral service. I grew up in First Baptist,
Hmm.
but my mother's mother was a member of Young's Chapel.
I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
she was coming.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, she died, you know, when my mom was real young, but you know, my aunt, Clara Spiller,
yeah,
and the Spiller sisters. Yeah, 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 yeah. And so we have that connection with Young's
Mm-hmm.
Chapel. I remember in school experiencing racism in subtle ways. And one of the ways was, since we're talking about music, um, the county had this lady who was a supervisor
Mm-hmm.
for music, Miss
Music.
Martin, remember?
Yeah.
And we had to listen to her over the radio. Now, this, I don't know how they did that hookup, but she was on the radio station and we had to listen to her on the radio. And she had a horrible voice. Just, it was really
Right.
bad. Of course, she was white. And I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
because she's white, but I just want everybody to understand the hierarchy. She was a supervisor of music. Now, we had music teachers who were superior to her, but she had the job. And I know this may be a little controversial for me to put it this way, but at my age, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Her voice sounded like somebody scratching on the blackboard. Okay, now our teachers were very respectful. So we did quiet activities while we were listening to her. And she would say, now sing this and now sing that. We'd be cutting out things and, doing quiet activities while she was purportedly teaching music. Um, And I remember her coming to Barnett. Remember, we had the uh, rallies for March of Dimes,
Oh
and
yeah.
we had to,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have a rally song and that kind of thing. And she came to see if we knew the song or whatever. And I remember, you remember Mrs. Ellis?
Veda Ellis. Yeah.
Veda
Veda
Ellis,
Ellis.
yeah. Well, she,
She was so kin to
yeah,
you,
she was
right?
kin to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And she was the sixth grade teacher,
Mm-hmm.
an outstanding sixth grade teacher. And so, anyway, she came and she got on the piano and she was playing. Well, Miss Ellis was pretty outspoken too. And Miss Seidner, the music teacher, was there. And I'll never forget, Ms. Ellis said, "We don't sing it that way." So Miss Seidner
Mm-hmm.
stepped to the side and you, she was very fair,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she was turning
Yeah.
red, like she was getting tickled too,
Yeah.
Ms. Alice got on that piano and played the song with jazz progression chords,
I remember
and we
that.
remember
Yeah.
that
I remember
because
her
she
playing.
put that her playing, she
Yeah.
put that jazz progression in
That's where you got that
it. Yeah, yeah,
from.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, absolutely. And so and we had that little movement,
Uh-huh.
because we were sitting there bored. She
Yeah.
said, "No wonder the kids." She said, "The kids won't fill up their little gleaners. You had little
Yeah.
gleaners fill up."
Yeah.
And she said, "That's boring." She didn't cut. She had no cut
Yeah.
card with Miss Mott. And we got up there and sang, and we sang in march with that little movement. But that was funny. But see, that was subtle racism. That was subtle racism. And then I didn't realize that the other elementary schools had auditoriums.
Oh, yep. I
And
see.
where did we have our programs? In the
In the
hallway,
hallway.
standing on the
Yep.
steps.
We did not have
We didn't
auditorium.
have an auditorium. We stood on the steps and they brought us in the various directions from the hallway, and
Yep.
there was a music room, over to the side, and
On this
they put
side.
some of us in there, and as you were ready to sing your part, you
Yeah.
could come out.
Come out.
That's called a way out of no way.
Right. But see, the white schools had all of that.
Yeah, I know. I know.
And you remember when we didn't have books for the mimeograph?
Oh, yeah.
You
Now,
hated it.
some people would have made excuses because, I mean, we had books for people in the classroom. You couldn't take anything home, but when we ran short, or if the teacher wanted to get a lesson across to us, we had something before the copying machine, people. Now, look this up on those $2,000 phones Miss Don's always talking about. It's called a mimeograph machine.
Mimeograph machine.
Mimeograph machine. If somebody brought one in here, two of them in here today, and one was aqua ink and the
And
other was
purple.
purple ink,
Yep.
I could tell you which one was
Yeah.
purple and which one was aqua
Yep.
because we had, and the teachers had beautiful writing.
Sure
They
did.
didn't type those things, did they?
Nope.
Nope.
Sure
And
did.
they made a stencil, and some of them had to
Crank it up.
crank it up,
Put the
and
paper through.
put the paper through, And some of the teachers had one at home.
My mom had one on the kitchen table. She bring all that paper home, and she had me to catch them when they came through, so they wouldn't fall on the floor. My whole hand turned purple
The ink
from the ink,
that
and
was,
I used to hate. I said I had to catch those papers again. She said, "Yep,
yeah,
pick it up. The one fell on the floor,
yeah. You know what's funny about that?
and then you could smell the ink.
The
You
ink,
know,
yeah,
you
it
pick
had
it
a,
up, you
yeah, it had
smell
a,
it.
yeah, it had a
Yeah.
strong smell, and it may have even been toxic, but we didn't know. We didn't know.
Right.
But look, uh, many times we carried those home when on the weekend.
Yeah, on the weekends.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I hear kids now say we don't have homework on the weekends, I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's bizarre. It's so away from my reality. And when I was teaching, they said, Miss Edwards, we don't have homework on the weekend. I said, they said, Miss So and So doesn't give homework, Mr. So and So. I said, what's the name on this door?
Uh-huh.
There will be homework, and even a couple of parents said, I said, well, we have to have homework. So when they have their benchmark exams and all of that, they'll be prepared. End of
Yeah.
story. I mean, whoever heard of no homework on the
Well, I
weekends?
gave homework
Yeah, I know you did.
weekends
Oh
too.
Lord, I can't imagine your mind even going in a direction of no homework. Now, uh, that's Barnett Elementary and Douglas High School. And Douglas High School was an interesting place because those teachers, I look back at some of the teachers who got moved into the
High
integrated
school.
schools.
Hmm.
And remember Mr. Simpson?
Yes, I do. And
Why?
because he was my next door neighbor, right next door on Dalton Avenue,
Yeah,
and his wife was a teacher in Ohio.
yes.
And also, he was my math teacher at Ole Junior High School.
See,
And then no, he was at Douglas first.
yes, he was the
He
band
he was the
director.
band director at
Uh-huh.
Douglas.
And he taught science.
Yeah. And
And that's what surprised people when he went into the integrated school
yeah,
because he was the band director
director.
at Douglas. That's what we thought of him as the band
Yeah,
director, but
yeah.
he taught other things,
Yeah.
But he was a
Mhm.
scientist.
And see, I didn't know, and he was my neighbor.
Yeah.
And all I knew that he was the band director
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that he did
Uh,
anything
how,
else.
how about physics and chemistry?
So I didn't know that either. I just knew him as a band director.
And look,
No.
and the athletic teachers at Douglas also taught substantive courses.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It
I was trying to think of the basketball coach. What was his name?
um Davis,
Yeah, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah. What did he teach?
It was something
It's
heavy duty. I mean, they all. You see,
yeah,
it wasn't like in the white schools.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Where you just
The gym
stayed
teacher taught
stayed in the
health
gym.
or
Yeah,
something. I'm
yeah,
just saying, not that
yeah.
health wasn't important. I don't mean
Right.
that, but the leap because when people found out Mr. Simpson, Hayward Simpson, taught science, it was mind-boggling
Yeah.
to some people. But he was a scientist. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he was a scientist. And I mean physics, chemistry, biology, that kind of stuff. That was what he taught. You know.
And then when they closed up, he went to Ole and
Mm-hmm.
he taught math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he taught math,
I don't
math
know
and
where is
science,
he.
and then he
He
went to then
okay.
he went to Huntington High, and I think he taught physics or something like that down
Yeah,
there.
he was at his
Hmm.
yeah.
And I thought every time I would see the band at Huntington High, I thought, wow, if only they had Mr. Simpson
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
teacher or the band director, they
Hmm.
would really be good. And when we lost Douglas High School, we lost that, uh, like, take something like majorettes.
Yep.
See,
We always had
yeah,
with the sit-ins and the meetings, and
Mm-hmm.
the NAACP came in
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because
Hmm.
they didn't want any black majorettes or cheerleaders.
Yeah, at the white schools. Yeah, and it's so interesting. My parents had such a unique relationship. My mother went to Douglas High School, segregated all her life.
Mm,
My father was on the other side of the bridge in Ohio. He went to integrated school his whole life. So when he moved over to West Virginia, he told them, he said, "This is what's going to happen when the schools integrate." He said, "I'm going to take athletics," because he was a basketball player. He said, "I'm going to take athletics." He said, "What's going to happen is they will use your talent to maybe win championships or whatever. But when it's time for scholarships,
the blacks would not get
it
it.
may not happen exactly like you want." Now, later on,
Mhm.
by the time we finished high school, I think a few people did get some
Right.
scholarships, but right away, early on, no,
No
no.
scholarships for the
Those
blacks.
guys had to get academic
Right.
scholarships. Okay, so I'm just saying, things did change exactly like he said. Our businesses closed
Yeah.
when with the integration of the lunch counters and all of that. At one time, we had two ice cream parlors. We had at least two dry cleaners, I think, and
Hmm.
a number of our businesses closed over time after integration of, of the schools and public accommodations. And that happened across the country. That happened
Oh, it
across,
did.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that happened across the country. But where our experience is so different, in places like the Carolinas and so forth, um, we we had to um, we had to cling close together because there weren't that many of us.
Right.
You see, West Virginia is a predominantly white
Right.
state. There were
Yes.
only in our town, what we were about 4%, 5%
About 4 or
of the, yeah.
5%. Yeah.
And see, in the Carolinas and so forth, I am thinking, it's up there. They had a significant black
Mm-hmm.
population, even in parts of the Commonwealth of Virginia. They're significant. You were there,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They were different. So we felt segregation and racism in a little bit different, a little different way, And so we basically lived in a concentrated part of the town.
Right.
Very few of us lived. I think some people lived in West End.
Yeah, they did.
Just a few, though.
Yeah.
Just a
And
few.
some live in Gandock,
Yeah,
but very
yeah.
few. Very few
Well,
in Gandock.
and those are my relatives up there, the Lanes. Yeah,
Okay. In
those are my.
Barbertsville.
Yeah, and yeah,
There's some in
yeah,
Barbertsville
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Very little in
yeah, yeah,
Barbertsville.
yeah. And so there were a few people who went to Huntington East,
Oh yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
Lanes, and maybe some people I don't know, but I know they did, and they participated in the athletic programs up there and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. But the segregation that we experienced, it was similar to what other people did, but a bit different because there weren't enough of us to matter, to well, we were contained. Most of us went to Ole, some went to Lincoln Junior High,
Yeah.
yeah, and all just virtually all went to Huntington High. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All of us went to.
yeah.
But I remember when I went to Ole
Oh,
Elementary.
that was different
Now I was there were the only maybe two or three blacks
in your
in my
class.
class
Yeah,
in third grade at Ole.
that must have been very interesting.
It was interesting because I never, socialized or played with, the whites.
Mm-hmm,
I was at Barnett,
mm-hmm,
in our church family,
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
school family. And when I got to Ole, I was just amazed, but I just went along.
mm-hmm.
And my best friend was a white girl,
Oh, okay.
my very best
Mm-hmm,
friend.
mm-hmm.
And we played together, at recess, and we sat together, we ate lunch together. and her parents, didn't have money for her and sister's lunch. So my mom, paid for their lunch every day.
Well, see, there was that caring that carried over
Yeah, that
into.
carried over
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
the other
Yeah.
school. And I know once I wanted to go over to her house and to play with her. She invited me over. So my mom dropped me off. Her dad came and said I had to go home.
Mm.
Said, you know, n- niggers aren't allowed to play with my daughter.
Oh, wow. And you were about 8 years old.
Yeah.
And of course,
Yeah.
that was a
So
new experience.
so I didn't understand why I couldn't play.
Yeah.
I went
You'd never
home.
encountered that. Hmm.
That was my first experience
Hmm.
encountering that. And then I know another instance at Old Elementary. One of the students asked me, "Did I grow a tail? Did I have a tail?"
Wow.
And I said, "No, I don't have a tail."
Mm-hmm.
Well, my mom said that you people grow tails.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. And so you had never heard anything like that
No, I
before.
said,
Yeah.
"What is she
And so
talking
when you
about?"
told your mom what?
She said, the parents taught them that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The parents taught children, the white parents taught the children about that
Mm-hmm.
racism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't born being racist. Children
No,
were
no,
not.
they come here to
You have
fight
to
slavery.
be
Yeah.
taught by your parents
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, we had that rich experience there, and as I said, we had three historically black colleges in West Virginia. Now, what's really interesting is Blue. When we were graduating from high school, do you
Hmm.
know Bluefield State was already predominantly white in 1968?
Was that right?
The student body,
The student.
it was a commuter school
Okay.
during the day, much like West Virginia State is now, because
Okay.
there's a huge white student body
That
coming
was
during the
Virginia.
day. Yeah,
Okay.
coming now at night. I think it still looks African American,
Okay.
but it's for commuter
It's
purposes.
just,
And you see, that's something else my father said. He said, "Now, understand, if you have a program at the colleges, at the uh, Negro, it was Negro back then, it's colleges that they will go to,
hmm,
they will come," and they did,
they came.
and they came.
Yeah.
And this happened
Like
across.
that movie. If you build it, they will
They will
come.
come.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will come. And when I think
Yeah.
about some of the luminaries that came out of uh, West Virginia State College, most people have seen the movie Hidden Figures.
Oh yes.
And Katherine Johnson came
Yeah.
out of West Virginia State College.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
did.
and when I saw her get that Medal of Honor from Obama, I was so proud.
Oh, I
I
was
was so proud.
too.
Yeah,
I had tears
yeah,
coming down my
yeah,
eyes. Oh,
yeah,
this is
yeah, yeah.
wonderful.
And
Finally.
so I called a friend of mine, and she happens to be from Carolina, and I said, "I guess you always ask, can anything good come out of West Virginia?" And now you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they named a building for her at uh, NASA. You know.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah.
did.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so there are many people who came out of our area, and many of them have a connection here to Washington and across the country. And I look at those schools and the role of historically Black colleges in
Hmm.
general.
Hmm.
Important role, important role. As I said, Fisk is one of those, Morehouse, Spelman. Uh, and then I look at a state like North Carolina that has so many
Right.
uh, historically Black
Hmm.
colleges. And what happened there is interesting. All of those state schools, the Black colleges that were connected to the state, they were state schools. Now, the heads of those schools are no longer presidents, they're
Hmm.
chancellors,
Oh, yeah.
because it's considered the North Carolina system.
Hmm.
Mhm. It's considered the system, North Carolina system. So um, that is a very that's a little,
Mm,
that
this
stings
is-
a little bit.
Yeah,
That stings a little
touch,
bit. Yeah,
yeah.
that stings a little bit. And I have friends who are in Florida, FAMU.
Mm.
Now, FAMU is in the city of Tallahassee, as is Florida State, the white school. And what has happened over time is those programs have merged in a way that you can take part of your coursework in one school and part in the other.
Mm.
And you have to look at your diploma. This is my understanding, and to see where you're considered a graduate.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
they're both the state schools right there in that one city. And of course, when I think of FAMU, I think of that wonderful band they have, the Marching
Oh,
100.
yeah,
Yeah,
they have
yeah,
a
yeah,
fantastic
yeah,
band.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know
yeah,
that band.
yeah. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic school too. And of course, you uh, taught in the Tidewater area, and there were a few great historically black colleges down there.
Hampton,
Hampton,
Norfolk State.
Norfolk State,
Yep.
and
That's
just to that's two. Those are two.
two.
Oh,
Hmm.
is there a school in Portsmouth?
Not no.
Uh-huh. But
Mm-mm.
I know Hampton, and then my
There's
youngest,
one Virginia
Virginia
State. Yeah,
Union,
Virginia Union.
Virginia State. Virginia State
Yeah,
is in Petersburg.
right.
Virginia Union is in Richmond.
Yeah. My granddaughter went to Virginia. I think Virginia State. The one in
Petersburg.
Pittsburgh.
Petersburg.
That's Virginia State, right?
Yeah.
That's where my
Yeah.
granddaughter graduated
Yeah.
from. That's
Yeah.
my daughter's daughter.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. They had an outstanding music program there. Undine Smith Moore was there. Um, and in music, just a great school. Uh, those colleges in Virginia are outstanding.
They are.
They're
Yeah.
outstanding. All the
All the
universities, yeah,
yeah.
in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they made sure that the historically black colleges there were well funded.
Oh,
And
they were.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
well funded. My nephew is going to be there at Hampton University, and I'd like for people to know that Hampton University, that's the school of Booker T. Washington. That's where he
Right.
went to school. Uh, is the only historically black college that has a Division I lacrosse team.
Hampton.
Yeah. So
Okay.
my sister, and that's my
Lacrosse.
sister's son, and he's going there. He'll be playing lacrosse. He's
Okay.
also academically right because well, my sister and her
Yeah.
husband not gonna have it any other way. You're not gonna be
Yeah.
you're not gonna play any ball if you don't have those
Right.
grades, right? Okay, and that
Yeah.
brings me into something else. Historically black colleges, and young people, I want you to understand this. Years ago, the NFL, when you saw black players, many of them were from black colleges.
Yep.
Many of them were from black colleges. They uh, were from places like Grambling, Southern University in Louisiana. Grambling, of course, the great Doug Williams came out of
Right.
there, the first African American quarterback to win a Super Bowl. And I mean, he really won it 42-10. Okay. He won it convincingly.
Hmm.
So he was a graduate of Grambling, and his coach was none other than the great Eddie Robinson.
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And he put so many players into that NFL. And then another school, Morgan State, right up here in
Yeah.
Baltimore, and Prairie View in Texas also had a number of players go into the NFL.
Mm.
Now, Yvonne, what's so interesting about that is most of those guys finished school. The historically black colleges where there were athletics, you had successful athletic
Mm.
programs. Most of them finished college.
Okay.
The same cannot be said for some who go to some of what I call the football factories and so
Oh
on. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, they're big
Right.
time in the ball,
Right.
but
But
not so big on graduation rates. Okay, now, here we go with the controversial part. Okay, Miss Don couldn't be all sweetness and light and tell it. Now, so now uh, when Deion Sanders
Right.
went to Jackson State, I was so delighted because, and you saw his focus was on
Right.
them being successful, not
Right.
just on the field, but
But
in the classroom.
yeah, off the field.
Okay.
Yep.
And that has been the narrative for athletes in historically Black colleges
Hmm.
to be successful on the
Oh,
field and
and off
off
the
the
field.
field. Okay. Some of them, if they did leave, they came back to finish. You know, and see, some of our kids became disillusioned, I think, about
You know, Patrick Ewing went back to school.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He sure did. And so somewhere along the line that was put into them, you
Hmm.
know, that was put into them uh, that you needed to complete your education.
Right.
Okay. And I remember years ago talking to Pete Richardson, who was the football coach at Southern, and he said, the thing, Miss Edwards, that I want my young men to understand is I'm helping them prepare to work 40 years. He said, and I tell them the chances of you making it to the NFL are slim. And if you do, you may work 4 years.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah.
his thing was, I need to help them work 40 years or be
Hmm.
prepared for that.
Right.
Okay. And in one year, he had a young man who was actually in the law school on the field.
Oh,
So he
yeah.
had finished undergrad and he was
And
in
in
the
the
law
law
school.
school. Oh.
Yeah. See,
Uh-huh.
so there was a different emphasis
Hmm.
for those people. Okay. You know, and yes, we've had some outstanding athletes come out of West Virginia. You know, one is Hal Greer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and that is
He went to
he went
Marshall.
to Marshall. He
Yeah.
was the first black
Black.
to play
Yeah.
sports
At
in at
Marshall.
Marshall. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and
And
just
they have a street named after him too.
Hal Greer Boulevard. And look
Yep.
at look at this. Hal Greer Boulevard intersects with Carter G. Woodson Avenue
Yep.
right there at
Yep.
where it was 8th and
Right.
16th.
Yep.
Oh no, ninth and
Six.
16th,
Yeah.
9th and
16th
16th.
Street.
Yeah.
Yep.
And who would have thought that we would have two streets named
Named after
after
him.
black
Black
men
men. Yep.
intersect?
Yep.
Who would have thought that?
And
And
there's a statue of him too. I
yes,
think it's at Marshall, right?
well, it's yeah, Hal
Yeah.
Greer,
Yeah.
and then there's a statue of Carter G. Woodson over
Yeah.
there near where Barnett.
Yeah.
And I said, there's an auto zone on the
Yeah.
site of
Yeah.
Barnett School. And I told somebody,
Yeah.
I said, that should be one of the highest producing
Right there.
uh,
Yep.
auto zones. Because they said, why would you say that? I said, because it's sitting on holy ground.
Yep.
Hmm.
You
I
sure.
said, that's
Hmm.
sanctified ground. They should be one of the highest producing auto zones in America. When I think of the creative people who came out of that period of segregation and who successfully went into the integrated schools and out,
Right.
uh, I know that at one time we had three dentists
Dr. Gunn, Dr. Wright.
and Dr. Elliott.
Yep. And I went to Dr. Elliott a lot
Mhm,
because he was
mhm,
close to
mhm,
the house.
mhm. Well, think about it. And so now we've said only 4%, 5% black, right? But most of their clientele was white.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, they
And
couldn't
then
have survived.
Dr. Elliott went to my church
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there was only one doctor, Dr.
Smith
Smith on Ninth
on Ninth
Avenue.
Avenue, on Ninth
So
Avenue
we only had one black doctor.
at that time, the one we know. And then earlier there had been someone else, but
Okay.
we didn't know them. Okay.
Okay.
But now look at what's happened now. Um, and I talk about this. We finished in 68 high school.
Right.
Do you know the class of 1966 produced three doctors?
They did?
Yeah. Bobby Gunn,
Okay.
Diane Pigram,
Okay.
and Donald Ross.
Oh, yeah. I remember Dr.
Isn't that
Yep.
wild? Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people that class of 66 was dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think he was a cardiologist.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And Diane, I can't remember. I think I don't want to say. I'm thinking internist. And then later on, I'll take a point of privilege here. Uh, uh, the Guns, that was Bobby, and then later
Patricia.
the yeah, she's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a lawyer, and she taught at Ohio University. And I can't remember what Judith did, but they all went to Fisk undergrad,
Okay.
and then they went to Meharry Medical. You know,
Yeah.
well,
Mm.
Patricia went to law school, but uh,
Yeah, but remember, they
the
lived
rest
down
of
the
them were
street from me on
mm-hmm,
Dalton.
on Dalton.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Now, later, uh, Dr. Gunn's office is still open.
Oh, his
His
son
son's,
took
yes,
over.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then, and the other son is a doctor.
Okay.
There were two younger ones. You know,
Uh-huh.
they're younger than we are,
Yeah.
and Michael and Stephen. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So Stephen's in the dental office, and I just marvel at how
Yeah.
that little community produced all
Right.
that. Mhm.
Well, class of 1998, attorney Donata Edwards.
Well,
She's the class of
six.
1998,
Well, I was 68. I was 68 high school,
68,
and 72
1960.
and 75. But look,
So class of 68 produced attorney.
well, yeah, okay, and a lot, and some educators and some corporate people. The twins, I think, went into corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
and Nell Bass, corporate America.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't want to start naming names, and
Right.
Shawnee's over here in Baltimore, doing very well. She's retired now, and I mean, just and for her four children, all
Mm-hmm.
finished school, and just like your kids, and
Yeah.
and so we go on.
We go
So the
on and
legacy
on.
goes on.
Right.
The legacy goes on. Now, my baby sister is a physician in Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister at home is she finished in accounting and business and finance. So I look back and I
The
said,
legacy. The
yeah,
legacy. Yeah,
can
my legacy, Miss Boggs, was a school teacher.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm a school
You're a teacher.
teacher,
Yeah,
retired.
yeah.
And then I have two children.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany,
Yeah.
she's my oldest,
Mm-hmm.
and she's in real estate,
Uh-huh.
doing very well
All
in
right.
Richmond
Okay.
and Hampton Roads. And my son, Tim Dennis, he's doing really well. He's corporate America CEO.
Okay.
No, the vice president of his company. So he's
Okay.
the
And he's in
baby.
Midwest, right?
He's in
Uh,
Westerville, Ohio.
Ohio, in the
Uh-huh.
Midwest.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
And
see, his grandparents were Dr. Dennis.
uh-huh.
He was the first black doctor in Dover, Delaware at that
Wow.
time.
Wow.
And his mother, Virginia Monroe, you know the
Yeah, yes, I know.
Monroes.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that was his
Yeah, Miss
grandmother.
Mitchell's sisters.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was
Mm-hmm.
his grand.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a teacher in Dover, Delaware. And his uncle from Dover, he lives in Philadelphia, but he was the first black attorney general
Mm-hmm.
in the White House under Reagan.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Wow.
Edward
Yeah.
S.
Yeah, he was
Dennis.
the deputy attorney general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
deputy. Yeah.
Edward.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
my kids' grandparents and
Okay.
uncles and cousins. And
Oh,
his baby brother, I mean baby uncle, is Dr. Lee Dennis, and he was in Dover. He took over his father's business,
oh.
but then I think he moved. I think he's still in Delaware,
Mm-hmm.
but he's took over. He's a doctor too.
Oh.
My son's and my daughter's uncle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And
So
then
the legacy moves
it moves
on.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And we, from humble beginnings, people who had to go up against some odds,
yeah,
and that expression in the black community, a way out of no way.
yeah.
It's real. It's real. That is real. People didn't make excuses, and see,
No,
that's why young people, when you have opportunities now, don't squander them. Don't squander them.
no.
I was thinking, to show you, I went. to a showing somewhere, and they said, "Oh, we're having uh, an exhibit of quilts."
Mhm.
And I
Mm.
said, "Okay." And I looked on there and I saw Teresa Polly Shellcroft
Yep.
on there.
Yep.
You know, I was proud. They didn't want to believe me when I told.
She
They said,
just
"Oh,
put.
you don't know her." I said, "Yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, she.
uh,
Oh, she's not. She's from there.
yeah.
Yeah, she's from there. You
Hmm.
know, yeah." And I was
Yeah.
just so proud of her. And then I think they had a showing recently in Huntington of several artists. She and Tina Williams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know her married name, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
she's also an artist.
I think she's in
She's in Pittsburgh.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
She's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
and just some outstanding people. I can't name all of them. We'll have to come back and talk about them. Um,
There's just so many
so many.
from West Virginia,
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah,
Huntington.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
so, I mean,
yeah.
we'll be here all day, all night.
Yeah,
For
talking about it,
so many people.
and they've gone all over the country. As I said, Randy Moss is a great football player
Hmm.
from Rand, West Virginia,
Yeah.
in the Hall of Fame. Bernie Casey, who was not just a football player, but an actor, and he was in that movie. I won't. I'm going to get you, sucker. He played the
Yeah.
the hero who came back
Yeah.
and it was with helmet
Yeah.
and go get Mr. Big,
Yeah.
that was Bertie Casey from Wyco, West Virginia. You know who else is from West Virginia? Steve Harvey.
Oh, he is.
Yeah,
He's from
I can't remember.
is it
Is it Welch? Well, the Welch area. It's
oh,
the
that's where
Welch
he's
area.
from.
Yeah, the Welch
Okay.
area. And
And
then the man who played on the spinoff of the Cosby Show. He was the cap. He had a diner, or something.
oh,
Lou Myers, was that
oh
his name?
yeah. Hmm.
West Virginia. Yeah.
And the minister is from Charleston. What's his name? Reverend the black minister.
Well, there was Mordecai Johnson who became
He's in
the.
Texas now.
Oh, wait a
Uh,
minute. TD
yeah,
Jakes.
he's
How can I forget that? Oh my
he's from West
goodness.
Virginia,
Yeah, yeah. TD.
Charleston at that
Yeah, Charleston
Charleston.
area. Yeah,
Yeah,
Charleston area. TD
he
Jakes.
had a
Well,
small storefront church.
yes, yes. And people kept saying, "Girl, there's a minister from your hometown, TD Jakes." I said, "TD Jakes, TD Jakes." I couldn't get the TD thing
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
And he's more my sister. He's in their
yeah,
group age
yeah,
wise. But then I remember, and see, most people don't realize he was musical prodigy.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
music
didn't
is
know
his root.
that.
Yeah, yeah, music is his
I
root.
didn't
No,
know
he can
that.
tear a piano and organ up
Uh
now. I'm
huh.
telling you. Yeah. And so, and my sister said, little Tommy Jakes. I said, okay, okay. So Bishop T.D. Jakes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right.
yeah,
You're right. He's from there. And so we just had a rich background. I remember the great dancers from the CDICs that Miss Brown, and remember
yeah,
Miss Hessen who came over to teach.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Her studio was on Sixth Avenue,
Yes,
but she
yes.
went to the
She came to the American
American
Legion.
Legion
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
teach.
And I can remember the great dancers. We had the what we called them, the big girls, and then we had
Yeah,
the little girls. And I remember there were some great dancers in there. Carolyn Thomas was
Sylvia
such, and
Sylvia
Sylvia Morrison,
Morrison.
and Veda Marie Botts,
Yeah,
to name a few. And I mean, they were just
yeah,
outstanding.
they were.
They were outstanding. Every time I would see Judith Jameson in the Alvin Ailey Dancers, I thought of Carolyn Thomas.
Yeah,
Willowy and just
yeah.
graceful and all of that.
And
Um,
Sylvia, she was a very good dancer with the CIC
oh yeah,
and a
and a
majorette for
majorette,
Douglas.
for Douglas. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
as was my cousin Gwen, and
Gwen Spiller was
yeah,
a
yeah,
majorette.
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. But I watched them and remember the band festival.
Oh
every year,
yeah,
and we would
every
wait, and
year.
it seemed like
Yep.
they would always put Douglas near the
At the back.
at the back,
And
but they're always
mm,
worth
yep,
waiting for
yep,
them, you know.
yep.
And
We,
the other thing that did, if you remember, it brought in the black schools from all over the state.
mm-hmm.
Garnet from Charleston, the school in Beckley. Oh, it started with an S. What's the name of Stratton or something like that? And I mean, that gave
Mm,
us an opportunity to see the other
mm-hmm.
black high schools, if you will, and
The band festival started in June the 25th, 2012. The band festival
no, went way back before then when
downtown.
we were when we were
2012.
no,
It was before that.
oh yeah, wait, yeah, because we were long gone.
Well, maybe that's when it closed
Yeah,
in.
it was the last one.
Oh,
That's
that was
the
the last one.
last one.
June the
Yeah,
25th,
2012.
2012. That's
Yeah,
when
that
it
was the
closed.
last one, and they had changed it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
But
we were over there in the 50s, late 50s,
because I
waiting for them to
remember
come.
waiting for them,
Yeah,
every summer
it
going down
rain
to
or
us.
shine, rain or shine.
Yeah.
I shouldn't talk about this, but some of the girls from the other schools had to wear leg makeup. Remember that?
Oh,
The
yeah.
orange.
Yeah.
And if it would rain, it was not a pretty sight. But I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm not gonna go where I could go. But yeah,
And
yeah.
remember Ann Rice was the first black
She was the first
majorette.
black majorette at Huntington
Huntington
High
High.
School. Yeah. And then they
And,
didn't want any, and my brother's class sat in the hallways and said, we want two
two
majorettes and two cheerleaders.
cheerleaders.
Yeah. They sat there and they got it.
They got what they
They
wanted
got
for a long
it. Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
finally got the first black majorette. And then
Yeah.
after that,
And when we went to
they,
Oldie Junior High, Debbie Merle was the first African American cheerleader.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. She was.
Hmm.
Yeah. At Oldie.
Amen.
Yeah. And then after that, uh, we got behind Rosetta Hayes,
Yeah.
Pony.
Yeah, Pony.
Yeah, Pony.
She
Yeah,
was
she
after
was a good
that.
one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I remember.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good one. So I just I'm so glad you came to be with me
Well, let
today.
me talk about
Yeah.
my sorority before we
I'm
end.
coming to that. I see you sitting there in that Delta Sigma Theta
Yeah.
shirt. So please talk about and this, Greek the Greek culture was so important to
Yeah.
HBCUs. So let me hear about that.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about my sorority, the history of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated was founded on June the 13th, 1913, at Howard University by 22 collegiate women. It was incorporated in 1930. Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated is committed to constructive development of its members into public service with a focus on the Black community and with the emphasis on scholarship, service, and sisterhood. The founders performed their first public act by participating in the Women's Suffrage March in 1913.
That's right.
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is noted for its national program. In 1937, the sorority began its first national program, the National Library Project, to establish a traveling library that would serve the rural areas of the South.
Mm.
And I'm very proud to be a member of the Fort Washington Alumni Chapter in Maryland.
Now you have some outstanding people who've been deltas. Uh, yeah,
Yep.
uh, I'm thinking of Patricia Harris,
Yes.
among others.
Yes.
Is Lena Horne part of that, or is she an AKA?
I'm not for sure about
Okay,
her. Okay.
but I know you've had some very prominent women
Yeah,
come
we
through there.
have.
And the emphasis has always been on service.
Yes,
Yeah,
service in the
yeah,
community.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so would the AKA say the same thing. And I had brought up the name of Miss Norman earlier because she was one of the founders, and she did come out of West Virginia, and she was one of the 9 at Howard. Also, they were
Mhm.
also founded at Howard University. Now, when I went to University of Maryland, I graduated in 72. Black Greeks were not on the campus yet. They didn't come on until about 2 years later. So I missed that
At Howard?
at Maryland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in College Park. They didn't have Black Greeks there at that time. They came
Okay.
about 2 years later. And
Okay.
so a good friend of mine, I believe she pledged AKA. She was a couple of years behind me. So yeah, but and kids don't they say what, they didn't have it, because see now
Right.
it's very
Yeah.
prominent. Okay, it's just like the kids now say, well, Sarah, tell us. I said, when I was there, we only had 2 Black basketball players at University of Maryland. See, that's a mind blower for most kids, because now they might have 5 starting,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, see, they only
Right.
had two on the whole team. Okay, so things have evolved.
Right.
they,
Yeah.
they have evolved. But I am glad to see more of our kids entertaining going to historically Black
Hmm.
colleges now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad to see that. I thank the Lord for Deion Sanders giving that spark
Right.
to that movement. And now we have several coaches at those some of the historically Black colleges, and the young people are rethinking
Hmm.
going to
Right.
those schools. Okay. And I tell them, if you have the talent, they will find you.
They will.
They will
They will
find you.
find you.
They will find you. And one of the examples I give is Shannon Sharp. Now, Shannon Sharp went to Savannah State in Georgia. His brother went to a larger school,
Hmm.
I think South Carolina, I think. And but Shannon is the one who's in the Hall of Fame. So when you
Yeah.
have the talent, they will find you. They will
They will
find you.
find you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was initiated at
Okay.
Marshall
Yeah, yeah.
University.
White school, the very
Yeah.
school that didn't allow your mom to do
Right.
her refresher
Right.
courses. See how things can turn.
Yep.
You see how
June the
that's
25th, 1974.
okay.
That I have been a Delta. It'll be 50 years.
And shortly in a couple of
50
years.
next year, the
Next year,
24th. Yeah, next year it'll be
next
50
year.
years.
Wow.
And this illustrious sisterhood. Delta
Okay.
Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Okay, are you proud or what? Okay, I see you. I see you. And I wore red today just to support you. Okay,
Thank you
red
so
and
much.
white. I wore red and white to support her. Okay.
Thank you so much, Attorney Edwards.
And I count many deltas among my friends. Okay. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I thank you for going. And people, I'm sorry we took points of privilege and we talked a lot about West Virginia, but you saw that DC connection. And I could not stop without saying that one of my heroes was Herbert Henderson.
Yes.
And for many reasons, he's a native of West Virginia. He finished at West Virginia State College, but he was one of the first blacks, one first African Americans to finish at GW Law School, where I finished. And back when he went there, he and another gentleman, they honored them together. Wasn't a very nice place for them. Okay, so many times they pretended they weren't even in class. They had to figure some things out. Okay. Now, Mr. Henderson married, Ms. Maxine, his
Right.
wife,
Uh-huh.
was from DC,
Oh, she
but she
was.
went to West Virginia State. That's where he met her.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And he came here to go to law school. And so I thanked him for paving the way for me
Mhm.
to go there. But as I said, he and the other gentleman uh, were not treated very well there during that period of time. but they made it anyway. Okay.
Mhm.
And so I tell young people now, please don't make excuses because some people endured some very unpleasant things for you to make it. You don't have anything like what they,
That's right.
okay? No, no,
That's right.
no. And I'm thankful to him, and his children are lawyers. I think there's one who lives out here in PG County who's not a lawyer. Uh, I think I think it's Leslie, but three daughters are lawyers and took over that firm down there.
Well, one of the daughters a justice, a
Yes, a
judge.
judge,
Okay,
Cheryl,
Cheryl.
Cheryl, and I think
Okay,
another one is now a judge. I think,
Leslie.
yeah, no, Leslie's out here. She's the
Okay.
non-lawyer, but I don't know which. I don't know if it's Cherie or Gail. I'm not
Oh, it's
sure.
Gail.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
is it?
think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I'm just so proud of them. But their dad was a remarkable person. He handled many civil rights cases and
Mhm.
other kinds of cases for us in West Virginia. And on that note, the first African American to be admitted to the West Virginia State Bar was J.R. Clifford, who in the late 1890s successfully tried a case where the county was trying to limit the school year for Black children to 5 months while having 8 months for the white children. He litigated that case. He told this particular school teacher, keep teaching whether they pay you or not.
Mhm.
She did. He won the case in the West Virginia State Supreme Court. He won the
Okay.
case. Okay, that was 50 years or so, 50 some years before Brown versus the Board of Education. He won that case.
Oh.
Oh, I just thought I would mention that.
Mention-
Okay, I mean, I'm not bragging. Yes, I
Right.
am. Okay, but it's okay because
Yeah.
it's backed up by the truth. Okay,
Mhm.
so there are many people who have paved the way for us, and I'm grateful. There's not a time that I go home, Yvonne, that I don't go past the AutoZone
Yeah.
and think about Barnett School. And then they turned the newer Douglas building into a community
Oh, they did.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fairfield Community Center or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know the exact name, but
I think it's Ebenezer or something
well,
like that.
it's around, no, they call it Fairfield, around on 10th
Fairfield.
Avenue in the
Mhm.
old Douglas building. And then there is an Ebenezer Center up on 8th Avenue because, Ebenezer United Methodist closed, the
Right.
church
Okay.
closed. I really hated to see that.
Yeah, I remember that.
I really
Yeah.
hated to see that. My part of my family went there, the Pharaohs and
Mhm.
so forth. And I'm kin to everybody. Yvonne. The joke was I'd have to leave town to get a husband because I was kin to everybody. So that's about right. But I'm just grateful that you came today to share with me, and yeah, hope you'll be back.
I'll be back anytime you need me. We're
Okay.
classmates.
Yes, 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 yes. And through many dangers, toils, and snares, we've already come.
Yeah.
And now, when I see the way the country is now, see, you and I have seen this before.
Oh, we've seen
We've
this.
seen this before, but the young people, I'm a little concerned for them because there's a streak of naivete there that makes it very dangerous for them. They're very naive about some things. They think if they can buy $400 sneakers and have a $2,000 phone, that all is well. I mean, they just, they miss some things.
Right. Right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And there's nothing wrong with having those things, but there's something there that scares me. They don't have any sense of peril.
No, they don't.
And right now, we're living in perilous times. Uh, I'm very concerned. I have several little nephews I'm concerned about, and I have some nieces. I'm particularly concerned about the young men because they're targeted.
Right. The
Yeah,
balance.
they're
Yeah.
targeted. They're targeted. And a few weeks ago on this show, we talked about how it's determined how many private prisons to build. And what they do is look at how many young men of color are in the third grade. That's about what, 8 years old, right? Mhm.
Right.
And they extrapolate and come up with some formula about how many private prisons to build. See, so
Yes.
it's that pipeline thing, that goes on. And so a part of uh, what rescued us was a good education system that was filled with people who were dedicated. And as Yvonne said, not to a job, but they were there because they had a calling to education. Uh, and I'm grateful for that. I couldn't call all the names of everybody, but understand that we honor the memory of all the teachers at Barnett Elementary School, Douglas High School, and all African American schools across this country. And we're talking about that segregated period now. And I particularly stand proud to honor all of the historically Black colleges and universities who produced those fine
Right.
teachers we had, yes, and who continue to produce great scholars across this country. So thank you. And next week, we'll see you again. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Bye
Bye.
bye.